Welcome back to our channel, where we bring you the newest, most dramatic daily updates you absolutely cannot miss. Make sure to follow and subscribe so you never miss the latest news and plot twists from the show. Joey had spent weeks suspended between suspicion and self-reassurance, as if he were standing at the edge of a cliff where a single touch could send him plummeting. The relationship between Haley and Randy had always unnerved him. Those secretive messages, the evasive glances, the explanations that slid away from reality as soon as they were spoken. Yet Joey still wanted to believe it was all just a misunderstanding. But on the fateful evening of November 14th, when Randy casually let slip a detail entirely opposite to what Haley had previously told him, every layer of defense Joey had built collapsed at once. That moment felt like a cold blade slicing straight into his chest, freezing him in place inside a home that had always felt warm but suddenly became disturbingly silent. He felt his anger rising, not the simple jealousy of a betrayed lover, but the deeper, more devastating shock of being made into a fool in his own house. Joey forced both of them to explain, unable to postpone or avoid the confrontation any longer. The suffocating tension between the three of them drained the very air from the room, leaving only the weight of unspoken truth hanging like a fraying thread ready to snap. And what terrified Joey most was not the answer itself, but the realization that, regardless of who was lying, the trust he once held so tightly had already been shaken beyond repair. While Joey faced his brutal awakening, elsewhere in Fairmont Crest, the dinner shared by Naomi, Jacob, Bill, and Haley became a stage filled with subtle gestures that would make any observant person suspicious. What began as a seemingly intimate meal quickly unraveled into a collection of awkward moments when Naomi noticed the way Bill's gaze always drifted away whenever the past was brought up. Haley kept switching topics as if a single misdirected question, an innocent anecdote, or even a passing reference to earlier years might expose the secrets she and Bill were desperate to bury. Worse still, the two people who appeared to be nothing more than quiet onlookers, Bill's daughter and her young husband, were more perceptive than anyone realized. They did not speak or react, but their eyes lingered on every detail. Haley's strained smile, Bill's stiffening posture whenever Jacob accidentally touched on sensitive memories. That chilling silence was the most alarming part of the evening, for it signaled that they had already begun piecing together scattered fragments into an image Bill and Haley hoped no one would ever see. It could be a hidden financial trail, a forbidden relationship, or a mistake from years ago that, if exposed, would bring everything crashing down like a house of cards. Bill understood that young people had sharp instincts, and what frightened him most was the possibility that they might uncover what he had spent a lifetime trying to conceal. At the same time, Anita found herself pushed into an invisible corner whenever Leslie's name surfaced. Outwardly she maintained her usual calm composure, but the moment someone accidentally mentioned that name, her eyes shifted, sharpening instantly, as if a door of memories she had locked long ago had been forced open. A mix of fear, anger, and helplessness flickered through her expression, though no one around her could grasp the reason why. Only Anita knew that the secrets tied to Leslie were far more than personal matters between two women, they were threads connected to consequences that could shatter family bonds and destroy everything she had worked to protect. She could not deny the truth outright, nor did she possess the courage to admit what had kept her awake night after night. Each question, each reference to Leslie pushed her deeper into a painful dilemma, either continue hiding and live under constant anxiety, or confront the truth and risk losing everything. But the most terrifying part was the feeling that Leslie still held an invisible power over her life, even without showing her face. While secrets were surfacing everywhere, Vanessa confronted the lingering ache of her husband's death, a wound that seemed healed but throbbed painfully with the slightest touch. Seeing her close friend slowly collapsing under life's pressure awakened that sense of loss with startling force. Vanessa remembered the man who had believed that kindness could change fate, the man who had guided her through her darkest years. That memory alone made it impossible for her to stand aside. But sometimes kindness dragged a person into battles they never expected, because in helping her friend, Vanessa might accidentally disturb the shadows surrounding her husband's death. Shadows she never imagined existed. In helping others, she revived a part of her husband's spirit, yet she also opened a door to a truth that might be even more devastating than his passing. Every action she took carried a quiet fear. Was the truth she was inching toward the same truth her husband had once sacrificed so much to hide? With all four stories unfolding at once, the entire community of Fairmont Crest trembled in ways its residents could not yet see. Joey stood on the brink of losing the two people he once trusted most. Bill and Haley faced the looming threat of exposure by those they underestimated. Anita was trapped by a past she could no longer contain. Vanessa stood at the threshold of revelations she was not prepared to face. Each thread was tightening, pulling every character into a crisis none of them could escape. And then the questions began to rise, like cracks signaling an approaching storm of scandal. What exactly was the relationship between Haley and Randy, simple infidelity or a covert alliance designed to manipulate the Dupree family? What secret were Bill and Haley hiding? Illegal finances, a forbidden bloodline, or a deadly mistake buried long ago? What made Anita freeze with dread at the sound of Leslie's name, an unforgiven sin or a broken promise that still haunted her? And what awaited Vanessa? Would her attempt to help a friend draw her into a new secret linked to her husband's death? As these threads intertwined, even the smallest event could become the spark that ignited the entire Beyond the Gates community into a full-blown scandal. The only question left was, who would fall first, and who would exploit the chaos to seize the power they had always wanted? After the initial shock, Joey began revisiting every small detail he had once dismissed as harmless. The nights when Haley came home late, the quick excuses that vanished into silence, the moments when Randy appeared exactly when Haley seemed irritated or exhausted, all of it began to link together into a map of betrayal. The more he looked, the more he felt himself pushed into the role of a fool who had trusted the wrong people. But what terrified Joey most wasn't the idea that they had betrayed him in a conventional sense. It was the gnawing suspicion that the two of them might be hiding something far larger, a joint scheme he had stumbled upon at the very moment it was nearing completion. Joey's anger was no longer a sudden outburst, it had become something simmering and volcanic, like molten lava waiting to erupt, threatening to consume everything he had ever tried to protect. Meanwhile, the dinner Naomi and Jacob hosted continued to leave a quiet aftershock. The moment their guests left, the air inside the house grew so heavy that neither of them could breathe naturally. Naomi realized that the minor changes in Bill's expressions weren't simply awkwardness, they carried fear, the fear of being exposed. The more she thought about it, the more she saw that Haley had been unusually cautious, as if terrified that someone might accidentally touch the forbidden subject. Jacob, on the other hand, noticed that Bill's daughter's young husband had been observing everyone with a sharper gaze than any adult at the table, as though he understood something the others lacked the courage to voice. The couple felt increasingly uneasy, uncertain whether they had accidentally brushed against a dangerous secret or had already been pulled into trouble they should have avoided long ago. And when they looked at each other, the suspicion no longer pointed outward. It began creeping into their own marriage. Were they both holding things they couldn't say to one another? In another corner of the community, Anita walked with her usual calm grace, but inside her was a chaos she could no longer contain. Leslie's name seemed to awaken a part of her she had tried to bury for years. She knew that if anything about their past came into the light, every relationship she had built and every effort she had made would crumble like a sandcastle. Leslie was someone Anita both hated and feared, because she knew Anita better than anyone else, knew all the weaknesses Anita had worked so hard to hide behind her polished mask. What frightened Anita most was not knowing what Leslie still held over her, or what she might do to drag her back into an old war she no longer had the strength to fight. And as the questions about Leslie grew more frequent, Anita felt herself being pushed closer and closer to the edge, like a taut string about to snap. At the same time, Vanessa was drowning in the ache of missing her husband and the responsibility she felt for a friend on the brink of collapse. She tried to remain strong, but the more she helped her friend, the more she confronted memories she had never wanted to revisit. She recalled the nights when her husband quietly spoke of strange pressures he faced, of certain people he refused to mention, and of invisible fears she had once mistaken for work-related stress. Now, as small pieces of her friend's situation began to echo things her husband had hinted at, Vanessa couldn't suppress the chilling sensation creeping up her spine. Something was being hidden within this seemingly perfect community, something that might have taken her husband from her, or forced him into permanent silence. She wanted to uncover the truth, but she feared that once revealed, it would destroy what little peace she had left. Characters who once seemed unrelated were now being drawn into the same vortex, as if an invisible hand were assembling the fragments to reveal a far darker picture than any of them imagined. Joey faced a truth capable of destroying his life. Naomi and Jacob stood on the brink of becoming entangled in someone else's secret while questioning whether they could still trust one another. Anita's past threatened to expose her. Vanessa confronted shadows that could overturn everything she believed about her husband's death. And in those fleeting moments, they each felt a subtle, growing dread, an intuition that what was coming would be far larger than anything they had ever anticipated. Was the betrayal between Haley and Randy merely the surface of a deeper scheme targeting the Dupree family? Was Bill's secret tied to power, money, or something unspeakable? Was Leslie preparing to return, armed with truths capable of destroying Anita? Was Vanessa about to follow her husband's footsteps into a darkness he once tried to hide from her? And as every thread pulled tighter, who would be the first to fall when the true scandal finally erupted across Beyond the Gates?